All right. Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Linda Feldman. I'm Washington Bureau Chief of the Christian Science Monitor. Our guest today is Representative Suzan DelBene, Chair of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee and a member of the House representing Washington State's 1st Congressional District. This is her second cycle as DCCC Chair and her second appearance at a Monitor breakfast. So welcome.
No, thanks.
House Democratic Leader Hakeem Jeffries reappointed Representative DelBene as the DTRIP Chair after the 2024 cycle, where 13 Democrats won in Trump districts and 3 Republicans won in Harris districts. Ms. DelBene is a graduate of Reed College and the University of Washington and had a career in the private sector before going into politics. And she was first elected to Congress in 2012, so you're a vet. Again, thank you for doing this. Now for the ground rules. We're on the record here. Please, no live blogging or tweeting. In short, no filing of any kind while the breakfast is underway. And when the session ends at 10, the embargo is lifted, and the Congress member mentioned that since we're starting a little late, she can stay a little after, so we will go the full hour. As many of you know, if you'd like to ask a question, just send me a signal, and I'll call on as many as we can get to as time permits. And also, before you ask your question, if you could wait for my colleagues have microphones, so we want to catch the questions for the audio. And also, we're making our own YouTube video. I hope that's okay. So, Madam Congresswoman, if you'd like to make brief opening remarks, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here, and thanks to everyone, and especially Linda, for the flexibility, as schedules have been challenging on the House, even right now, with votes being canceled for tomorrow. We are in a strong position to take back the majority. We have the Republicans only have a 3-seat majority in the House of Representatives, which is a microscopic majority. We picked up 2 seats last cycle, so a strong performance across the board, and we need 3 more to take back the majority. We have 26 frontliners. Those are the folks who are our incumbents, who are in the toughest re-elections across the country, who are doing an incredible job representing these purple districts across the country. And we have 35 districts on our map where we're on offense across the country. 35 in places all over the country, places like Pennsylvania, Michigan, Arizona, but Kentucky and Tennessee and Iowa, because there are great opportunities. We have districts where we were very, very close last cycle. Democrats who got over 49% of the vote, so we just lost. We have 7 of those seats, are part of that 35. We have 3 Harris seats where Vice President Harris won, that Republicans have. We have districts that were with Biden in 2020, went to Trump in 2024, swing districts. Huge opportunities there, and even in places like Kentucky, where we have Andy Barr running for the open Senate seat. So we have an open seat there, and that's a seat that Governor Beshear won by 20 points in 2023. So it's a broad map. It's a map all across the country, but Democrats have had overperformance of about 15% in special elections since November of 2024. We have seen strength across the country because people are outraged by what they see happening. The number one issue that folks have wanted to see addressed across the country is lowering costs. And the administration, both Donald Trump and Republicans in Congress, have done nothing to lower costs. It's been a broken promise to people across the country between tariffs and the big ugly bill. They've been raising costs for families. Those costs continue to go up. And people are outraged and they're scared by what they're seeing. And I think that you're seeing that on the ground everywhere in the country, and definitely in swing districts. Republicans don't want to talk to their constituents. They don't want to do town halls. And they know that the public is not with them, but they still are blindly following Donald Trump. So that is a huge opportunity for us as we look to take back the majority. You hear those voices all across the country right now. We see it on the ground. And all of that together is why we're going to take back the majority in 2026. So I appreciate being here, and I'm going to take questions.
Great. All right. Thank you. So I'll start with a question or two, and then we'll move to reporters around the table. And please do introduce yourself, name, and outlet when you ask a question. So I want to start with this whole redistricting issue. So the Democrats have called the Republican plan in Texas to do off-cycle redistricting cheating, but Democrats are also prepared to fight fire with fire and do their own redistricting in Democratic-controlled states like California, New York, New Jersey, Minnesota, your own state of Washington. So is it game on, and how do you see this playing out?
Well, Republicans know they can't win on the issues, so they are trying to rig the system. And their focus isn't on listening to their constituents and looking at what they would need to do from a policy standpoint to stand up and win voters across their region. Instead, it's how do we change the line? And Donald Trump went to Texas and basically, ordered Texas to go into redistricting. And so far, Republicans look like they want to comply. But they should be careful what they ask for, because when they start playing with maps, they also change districts, and that will make a lot of Republicans vulnerable. And we absolutely are going to compete in every single one of those districts and have an incredible opportunity to win. I said earlier we're overperforming by 15 points in special elections across the country. You can absolutely know that people are outraged. The people of Texas do not think that politicians should be picking their voters. Voters think they should be picking their representatives. So you're going to continue to hear and see that on the ground, and we have information that we've seen directly in Texas on that. So people don't like it. It's going to put Republicans at risk, and we absolutely are going to be competing across the board there. So they should be careful what they ask for. And if they go down this path, absolutely, folks are going to respond across the country. We're not going to be sitting back with one hand tied behind our back while Republicans try to undermine the voices of the American people. And hopefully they won't go down this path. Hopefully they'll listen to the people of Texas, the people across the country, but they don't know how to win otherwise. They know their policies are not popular.
So if you do redistricting in some of these Democratic-controlled states, do you have a game plan for how many potential seats you could pick up if you're going to fight fire with fire?
I think right now you hear, folks talking about what they might do. Right now it's on Texas to see if they're going to move forward or if they're going to listen to the people in their communities and focus on the tragedy, the natural disaster that took place in Texas. That should be their number one priority. Instead, they seem to be focused on trying to protect a majority because voters aren't happy with what they're doing.
Right. Cameron Joseph from the Monitor, to your right.
Thanks so much for being here. One question on that, and then one question on fundraising. First of all, I'm wondering whether you regret that in so many Democratic-controlled states and left-leaning states they have adopted these more nonpartisan plans, and do you think places like Washington, like California, should be trying to undo the more bipartisan or nonpartisan systems that have been put there in the last 15 years? Secondly, NRCC outraised the D-TRIP last quarter. I know you're pretty close in cash on hand. House Republican incumbents in swing districts are outraising Democrats. In the past, when we've seen big successful cycles for a party out of power, at this point they're already outraising their opponents, including Democrats in 2018. Are you concerned about that cash disparity, and how are you going to be able to respond?
On redistricting, again, we absolutely are going to respond if this is the path they are going down. People are outraged across the country by this, and they know that decisions that are made even in other states are impacting what happens in Congress and what happens to their state. So we absolutely are going to continue to fight for fair maps, and I think you've seen Democrats over and over again fight for strong rules of the road on voting rights, But again, Republicans don't care. They're throwing it out the window, and because they know their policies are not popular with the American people. On fundraising, Republicans just passed this, big ugly bill that rewards the wealthiest and the well-connected. It's not surprising that they saw a response from that recently. And highlights again how critically important it is for there to be folks who are going to stand up for their communities and stand up for policies that actually support working families. You've heard over and over about how this bill is a transfer of wealth to the wealthiest, but it is raising costs for working families, raising health care costs, food costs, energy costs, and then you add tariffs on top of that. People see that on the ground. Absolutely, we have huge grassroots support, folks who are supporting our efforts too. So they for this time stepped up, but over and over again, we've been in a strong position, and the American people are on our side.
Maria Recio from Austin American Statesman.
Hi, nice to talk to you. Yeah, just to follow up on Texas redistricting, I wonder if you could be specific in terms of what some of the some of the districts might be, because certainly there's in the Rio Grande Valley there's 2 districts held now by Cuellar and Vicente Gonzalez, that Trump won. So I mean, you say you have all the support, but it seems that those are 2 districts that could easily be redrawn, and even without the Democrats keeping the current lines, but redrawn and give the Republicans an advantage. So how do you see the vulnerability in Texas, especially among minorities?
So when they start moving lines, you get this cascading effect all across the state. And remember, you take folks that we have who have overperformed, who have won in districts that Donald Trump won. We have 14 Democrats who are in seats that Donald Trump won also last cycle, because we have incredible candidates talking about the issues that matter, and our authentic, independent-minded representatives for a district who came to Washington, D.C. to get things done for their districts. That's why we overperformed. That's why we picked up seats last cycle. And that's also why we have incredible opportunity when they start playing with the lines, because if they're going to start moving voters around, move what they see as kind of Democrats into Republican districts because they're trying to create more districts that they think they can compete in, they're going to create vulnerabilities on their side, and those are huge opportunities for us. So that's why I say we don't know what a map is, if they put the map together, what it's going to look like, so I can't kind of opine on what that is. But I know once you start going down that path, you're going to make a lot of changes. And I bet if you talk to a lot of Texas Republican members of Congress, they're not excited to see these changes either. So the people of Texas are not excited about it. They think it's a terrible thing to do. They think there should be other priorities, understandably, with what happened in the Hill Country and the incredible damage that took place there and loss of life. That should be the focus. Instead, they're focusing on trying to do extreme gerrymander. We'll see what they do, and we'll see what a specific map looks like in terms of what impact that has on any given district.
Yeah, I'm sorry, just a quick follow-up.
Yeah.
Sorry about the mic, sorry.
No.
I had heard from Texas that the DCCC has quietly been offering to pay the fines for if the local Texas lawmakers decide to leave the state to prevent a quorum from coming through, because they put those fines in. Is there any truth to that?
We are not involved in that at all. We are focused on getting the message out to the people of Texas that this is what Republicans are trying to do. That is absolutely our focus, is getting the message out to the people of Texas so that Republicans and the people of Texas understand what's taking place.
All right. Peter Nicholas from NBC.
Hi, thank you. To what degree do you think Democrats might try to carry the message that Trump's behavior and conduct in office and ethical mindset might be an issue that they should consider when they vote in the midterms?
I'll say that for
Will Democrats try to carry that message, or do you think there are other messages like the economy that might be more important? Trump's conduct, his ethics, his behavior in office, will that be a message that Democrats will want to take to voters in the midterms?
Well, I think number one across the board is affordability. The cost of living. Folks are struggling with the cost of housing, food, childcare, healthcare, energy costs, and that was the big promise Republicans made, that they were going to lower costs on day one. Absolutely are not focused on that at all. Their focus is on kind of helping the wealthiest and well-connected, doing whatever Donald Trump tells them to do. And families are feeling that and seeing that. That's why when you look at data and talk to folks on the ground across the country, this big ugly bill is extremely unpopular, and the more people learn about it, the more unpopular it becomes. And so it's kind of what is the thing that is impacting people's lives right now? Right now, it is costs. Absolutely, there are other issues out there that are critically important, and the actions of this president and the kind of blind loyalty by Republicans is an issue. If you talk to voters in swing districts too, they want representatives who are going to stand up for their communities. They don't want folks who are blindly loyal. They believe that Congress should be a check on the administration and a co-equal branch of government. And will that come up as well? Yes. Number one across the board, making sure that we're focused on lowering costs for working families.
Melissa, did you want to go?
Yeah, thank you.
Melissa Burke from Detroit News.
Yeah, Detroit News. I think you guys are targeting about, three districts in Michigan, and again, 2 of those seats might potentially be open with John James running for governor and maybe Bill Huizenga, will he or won't he run for Senate. I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit how you view Michigan in terms of priority in the midterms on your battlefield map, kind of how confident you are you might be able to flip a seat there.
A big priority on our map. Usually when I talk about kind of the emphasis of this cycle, Michigan's definitely a key part of that. One, because we have a few races there. 2, because we also have incredible opportunity given what folks have seen happen, both with open seats, but also with the fact that you have someone like Tom Barrett who's not even listening to his constituents, doing town halls, engaging with his community. People are outraged by that. People want representatives who are going to stand up and to show up, and they are feeling the impact of these terrible decisions that have been made, the policies that have been put in place by congressional Republicans and the administration. Tariffs over and over have a big impact. The uncertainty that has resulted in terms of the whiplash from tariffs, yes, no, that alone has had a terrible impact on communities. And so costs and the economy are still absolutely number one. And we have great candidates who are stepping up to run. They want to make sure that they have strong voices out there. And frankly, in the environment we're in, there's a lot of people across the country who are stepping up to run for office, who want to stand up, patriotic, stand up for their country, for their community, make a difference given what they see happening. So we absolutely are invested there. We have these districts that have been really close also, and incredible opportunities there. So Michigan will be a focus.
John Gizzi from Newsmax, to your right.
How do you do, Madam Chairman? David Hogg, the deposed DNC vice chairman, has launched a new group focusing on taking out senior members of Congress within their own party. I believe his organization is backing the opponent to Speaker Emerita Pelosi, who is a former aide to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and the young man who's running against former Majority Leader Hoyer in Maryland. How does the DCCC address serious primary challenges to its own members, even when they're, shall we say, have been on the scene a long time?
So the DCCC is focused on making sure that we take back the majority. Our primary focus has been on these purple districts across the country, both our frontliners who are incumbents in the toughest re-elections and in the places where we think we have opportunities to flip districts, those 35 districts across the map. That absolutely is our focus to get there, to make sure we pick up the 3+ seats we need to take up the majority. We also have a lot of really strong incumbents who are in a strong position and are going to run their elections, and many members of our caucus who are going to be there to stand up and support folks. So every district, every race across the country is different, but we know we have strong incumbents who have connections to their communities, and voters know the work that they've done for their communities and are going to stand up for them and vote for them.
So are you going to back challenged incumbents, such as Speaker Pelosi or Mr. Hoyer?
Again, our caucus is standing up and backing members across the country, and the DCCC's focus is on these purple districts across the country.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Joe Perticone from the Bulwark.
Hey, thanks for doing this. I'm going to ask about Jeffrey Epstein, and if you think that this story that seems to not be going away is an actual messaging component for Democrats, or is it getting woven into broader messaging about corruption, or do you think it's just a uniquely Republican problem right now?
Well, I think this is another example of a broken promise where, Trump and his administration promised transparency. The American people deserve transparency. They broke that promise, and people are reacting to that. And this goes into a string of broken promises, and saying that they were going to lower costs, stand up for working families. Broken promise after broken promise, and why? To protect the well-connected or the wealthy in the legislation on the big ugly bill. It was about protecting the wealthy and the well-connected. There absolutely, as we look at this too, people feel that that's the same path that they're on. They're breaking promises to protect the well-connected, and not focus on the needs of the American people. That's why it resonates so broadly across the country, and they should have transparency.
Okay, Mary Ellen? Yep, McIntyre from CQ Roll Call.
Good morning. I wanted to ask about the news out of New York this morning that Mike Lawler is running for re-election rather than governor. Do you have an immediate reaction to that? And then bigger picture, sort of following up on what you were saying of, this is one of the districts where you have just so many Democrats who have already come out to run, Michigan, Colorado, and several places across the country that are some of your top targets. Do you expect that you guys can get involved in primaries? How do you kind of feel about having so many people with, legitimate campaigns running in some of these seats?
First of all, it's not surprising that Mike Lawler made this decision. Republicans are scared across country. Elise Stefanik is not an ambassador to the UN because they were worried about losing that district that she won by over 20 points. Not surprising that they're scared about the Lawler's district too. And so there's huge pressure to make sure that folks don't leave. And so I'm not surprised by that decision at all, but it highlights how vulnerable Republicans are and how scared they are about having an open seat and keeping the seats that they might have incumbents in right now. We have incredible candidates across the country. We have, competitive primaries in a lot of places. And so those will continue. And there are people who might be running who haven't announced yet in a lot of districts across the country too. So we have new announcements happening, on a regular basis, and definitely this quarter will be a time where folks will enter races too. So we have great candidates running. They will kind of go out, talk to voters in those districts and make their case. But we are in a strong position here, and I think that decision is yet another example of how scared Republicans are.
So do you anticipate that the DCCC could get involved in some of these primaries next year?
I think we're going to have great candidates run, and we're going to see kind of how folks do, make sure folks are running strong campaigns so that we have strong candidates in the general election.
Story Hinckley from the Monitor, to my left.
Hi. So with the House leaving early to avoid a vote on the Epstein issue. I can imagine that it will likely remain a big topic during the August recess, and building off of a previous question, it doesn't really rank as a top voting issue for many Americans, so I wonder but Democrats have really relished the messaging on this thus far in Congress, and I wonder if you see the Epstein issue as an opportunity for Democrats or maybe as a distraction away from potentially messaging on the beautiful bill, for example.
Well, I think there's this, consistency in terms of what they've done in the message, and that they have broken promises over and over. The big bill is a broken promise. It is a broken promise that was made to lower costs, to focus on the needs of working families. An incredibly big broken promise. And again, the unwillingness to provide transparency, to provide information about Jeffrey Epstein is another big broken promise. So I think what we see and what people are seeing across the country is broken promise after broken promise after broken promise from this administration. Republicans in Congress agreeing or going along with that, or canceling votes so that they don't have to actually stand up and take a position on any of this. They're scared, so they continue to do whatever Donald Trump tells them to do and aren't willing to stand up to actually listen to the needs of their communities or the constituents. That's a theme across the board, and that's why I think it resonates so much, and that's part of what we continue to make sure we hold Republicans accountable. Their unwillingness to keep the promises they made, their unwillingness to stand up for their communities.
Unrelatedly, when you look at your map, what is one seat that really excites you that you think could maybe surprise America come next year?
Well, one that may not be on everybody's map is Arizona 2, where Jonathan Nez just announced his candidacy to run, a great candidate, not one that everyone thinks about, but against a very, very extreme Republican, Eli Crane. That's a huge opportunity for us. I talked about Kentucky 6 earlier and the opportunity we have there with an open seat and a seat that Governor Beshear won by 20 points. We have in Tennessee with Andy Ogles, another very, very extreme Republican who underperformed Donald Trump, is not a strong representative for his district, another opportunity there. So there's some examples of ones that I don't think usually have been on the radar when people talk about seats that are opportunities for us, that I think we have great opportunities.
Nancy Cook from Bloomberg.
Oh, thanks so much for doing this. You talked a little bit. Oh, thanks. You talked a little bit about. You have referenced the messaging on the tax and spending bill several times with the Medicaid cuts and the SNAP cuts and the what you called the giveaway to the rich. I'm wondering, sort of heading into this now 6-week August recess, what do you think is going to be the most potent message for Democrats on that, and what does your polling show on that? On attacking the Republicans' bill.
The polling shows that the more people hear about the bill, the more they learn about the bill, the more they dislike it. It's already underwater across the country. People know that millions of people are being kicked off of health care. And now that states are putting out their proposed, are starting to receive the proposed premium increases for next year, people are going to see the ongoing sticker shock of that decision right away. And you've seen over and over articles about these big increases to premiums for next year. That's going to impact folks who have coverage and are going to have to pay a lot more. Healthcare costs going up. And again, when we're talking about how important it is for families to see lowered costs, going in the absolute wrong direction. So we are going to continue to make sure that people understand the implications of this bill, the massive cuts to health care, massive cuts to nutrition programs, the impact that has on communities. If you go to food banks in our communities, they're already seeing greater need. How do they keep up to help there? The impact that has if kids don't have free school lunch, the impact that has on education, the impact it has on our farmers. These collectively, talking about all of these issues in different communities, energy costs going up, over and over and over again, making sure that people understand what the impact is of this legislation. I think people see that, but we're going to continue to highlight that and make sure that people are aware that Republicans are raising costs on families, the impact it's having across the board, and that Republicans in Congress are blindly going along. You can't say, I, of course, would never cut Medicaid and then vote for a massive cut to Medicaid and then go back and say, well, but I still support Medicaid. That's the doublespeak that we see a lot of Republicans trying to do, and we're going to hold them account for it. The reality is they voted to cut Medicaid for communities, and many of their constituents are going to be impacted by that, and they're not standing up for their communities. It's just blind loyalty.
Mm. So let me throw one in. Is Zoran Mamdani's rise to the top of New York City politics, is that good for the party nationally? Will that affect your effort to take over the House?
Well, I think one thing we know to be true in election after election that we see is when you have a candidate out talking about the issues that matter to voters, they win. And the number one issue to voters across the country, as I've said, has been cost of living, affordability, and that's what's important to people across the country. Now, bright blue mayor's race, in New York, I'm not sure that folks in Arizona care who the mayor of New York is or a primary in New York. What they care about is having somebody who's going to stand up for them, for their communities, a candidate who's independent-minded and going to focus on their communities. That's where the focus is. And so I don't think that in Arizona or Michigan, folks are thinking about who the mayor of New York is, or in a bright blue area, they're thinking about who's running to stand up and be a voice for my community.
All right. So any other questions? Yeah, go ahead. Next to John. And please introduce yourself.
Yes. I'm Caroline Bekiel. I'm a campaign reporter at The Hill. Thank you very much for doing this. And Linda, thank you so much for organizing this. I had two questions on around redistricting. I guess my first question is, with Texas appearing to move forward with redrawing the lines and California seems ready to respond, potentially other blue states doing this as well, do you have concerns that this is going to start to open up an arms race of redistricting where it's going to become a tit for tat and we're going to see multiple states get involved? And my second question is, I understand that Democrats have made this argument that they believe that they should not be fighting one hand behind their back in terms of this redistricting fight. Does it undermine Democrats' messaging around democracy, particularly with some of these states like California, where they have independent redistricting commissions, some of which have been passed by, these ballot measures that have been approved by voters? Do you have concerns that this is undercutting Democrats' messaging, that they're kind of undermining the will of voters or working around some of these institutions and bodies?
Let's be clear, what Republicans are trying to do in Texas is undermining the will of voters. They're not listening to the people of Texas. This wasn't something that sprung because the people of Texas said, please, we want you to redraw the lines. This was Donald Trump saying, do this, and them saying, yes, sir. That's where they're on, given all that's happening. That has been their focus. So they've been pretty clear that they see this as their strategy, and because they know that they can't win on the issues, they can't win their candidates or on the issues. So their only other option is to try to rig the system, and that's what they're focused on. But people across the country understand this does have implications across the country, and that's why you hear the outrage and the response from governors and others across the country saying we're not going to have decisions made in Congress impacted because other states are trying to kind of do something that's going to impact what the will of the voters across the country. So we're not going to fight with one arm tied behind our back. Republicans should be careful what they ask for, because Republicans are going to lose seat if this is the path that they go down.
Or just to follow up, are you concerned that this is creating like a redistricting arm race and that we're going to see multiple states involved and, even potentially something that we could start to see every 2 years?
Well, you're already seeing, Republicans did North Carolina last year, last cycle. They are talking. They've got Ohio, now Texas. You hear them talking about others. They've already started down that path.
To my left. No? Yeah. Yes, go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
Thank you. Hi, Matthew Choi with Washington Post. Good to see you again. You talked a little bit about if redistricting goes through in Texas, there might be some more vulnerable districts for Republicans. Can you talk to me about where you are in terms of recruiting candidates to challenge them? Are you waiting until after the district lines are drawn to reach out to them? Has contact been made? Where are you kind of in that process?
Yeah, if they go forward, we need to see what the map is like that they put forward. I think we've heard from a lot of folks who would be excited to run or support folks running because they want to stand against what Republicans are doing. But until we know specific lines and what districts are, and frankly, if they are going to go down this path, they very well may, but they should, as I said, they should be careful what they ask for. But until we see a map, I don't know what districts, where and who might be running where.
Any names we should keep an eye on?
Not yet until we have more specifics.
All right. And then at the end of the table, you. And tell us your name.
Yes, hi, Savannah with USA Today. I just wanted to ask, and thank you again for doing this. From the states you mentioned, from Kentucky and Tennessee, as well as just across the map, I was wondering if you could kind of elaborate on any plans specifically for outreach to rural voters, any new plans or kind of methods to go about that from last cycle, or just kind of what are some of the plans there?
No, absolutely. We spent a lot of time last cycle looking at the different ways to reach out to voters across the country in our battleground districts. So that's our focus in these battleground districts. How do we make sure we're reaching everyone in those districts? And whether it's rural communities, communities of color, how do we make sure we're reaching everyone within those districts? And we did a lot of work on media consumption research to understand kind of where people were getting their information and how best to connect with them. And I think that informed a lot of the work we did in terms of what are the community leaders, sometimes it might be a local paper, sometimes it's online social media that folks are using, but it might be kind of a combination of all of that. And make sure that we're getting messages out to folks. So that was incredibly helpful understanding exactly how. That's also an evolving all the time in terms of how people continue to change how they get information. So we're going to continue to look at that. But we invested much more in digital, in relational organizing, where people are talking to people they know and talking about elections. That was incredibly impactful in reaching out to people and community leaders, et cetera. So I think that helps us going forward too in rural communities and making sure that information's getting to them, as well as to different communities within a district to make sure we're addressing and getting information to them in the way that they're most likely to see it. And so that's important to us going forward. We'll continue to do that ongoing work as we look at the maps that we have today. But I think some of those basic learnings are really important. But nothing's more important than having a strong candidate who is traveling throughout a district and talking directly to voters. That's incredibly important, and that will continue to be incredibly important. And I think our success and why we overperformed last cycle is because we had great candidates who were on the ground talking to voters about the issues that mattered most to them. And lowering costs was a big one of those issues. And we're willing to talk about tough issues, as well as talk about coming to Washington D.C. to get things done, not just do whatever someone told them to do. In this case, Republicans doing whatever Donald Trump tells them to do.
And just a quick follow-up, because you mentioned specific issues. When it comes to, because you mentioned like the big bill, the Trump's bill, are there specific messages related to that for rural voters connecting with them?
Absolutely are. I mean, first of all, there's the bill in terms of the cuts to healthcare, and rural hospitals are one of the first areas who are going to be hurt the most. And when you are in a rural community and healthcare might be far away already, and then you get rid of a rural hospital, it's even harder to find healthcare. And so rural areas are going to be greatly impacted by these cuts to Medicaid and the impact on rural hospitals specifically. If we look broadly too, if we look at the impacts on agriculture, have been pretty devastating between tariffs. 80% of our potash comes from Canada and fertilizer for the United States. So you raise input costs to our farmers. You then cause them to lose access to markets around the world. So their inputs are going up, and then workforce challenges that they see as a result of the administration's policies. Farmers are hurting. That's hurting rural America a lot. And so you look at places like Iowa, where you have a lot of seats in play too. Huge impacts because of policies this administration has put in place. So absolutely. And then, cutting public broadcasting and public radio, where emergency alerts and important information that rural communities rely on, just keep adding on and on the challenges that rural communities are facing because of the decisions and policies that Republicans have put in place, and rural communities are feeling the impacts of that.
Okay, Emily Wilkins from CNBC.
Hey, Chairwoman, how are you doing
Good.
today? Oh, thank you.
I wanted to go back to tariffs for a minute, because obviously it's been a story that's really dominated. And I think for most of us who are in this room, in this town, understand the potential, what's at risk if these tariffs do go into place. However, it seems like the average American, they haven't seen giant price hikes yet. There's not the same freak out that we saw 2 years ago with high inflation. I'm wondering how you're thinking about messaging on tariffs over the next year and into the 2026 midterms. What's the DTRIP's message on that if the average American isn't feeling the impact at this moment? Thanks.
So on tariffs, people absolutely are feeling the impacts, not only on price increases, but they're feeling the impact also of uncertainty and instability. The best way to describe it was a business, the component manufacturer in my region, who said, "I'm being tariffed out of business." It wasn't any one particular tariff. It was the ongoing uncertainty where international customers of theirs were saying, we're going to find a place where don't have to worry about whether the tariff's going to go up or down or change every day. We just want a place to go where we have that certainty. Losing business and impacting jobs in our region. We're hearing that from businesses over and over again. They don't know day to day what's happening. Is something going to happen on August 1st? Is it not? How do you deal with that uncertainty? There's kind of the meme going out there about Trump always chickens out, the taco meme. Part of that is that he won't really follow through on some of that. Maybe he won't. Maybe he will. But the uncertainty of not knowing has a huge impact on businesses all across the country, and that impacts investments in communities. Folks don't want to invest and start an investment if they think something's going to be yanked away from them. And so if you talk to folks across communities too, that has decreased investments, that uncertainty. So that alone has a huge impact. And then you add on immediate impacts it had to farmers not being able to sell goods. I represent, part of Washington State, obviously on the border with Canada, and our farmers have been directly impacted by goods not being able to ship goods into Canada in the same way that they have been able to in the past. So, of course, all of these issues have a great impact, and some, maybe more localized in certain places than others, depending on what particular industry you're talking about. But people are feeling it everywhere. And then, what's the plan? Supposedly it's to do all these deals, but deals have to go through Congress, and these tariff changes have to go through Congress. Because part of the reason, and Congress has the authority, so I would argue that they've needed to all along, and this is another place where Republicans have been blindly loyal and unwilling to stand up and use their congressional authority to make sure that there's a vote in Congress. But deals need to go through Congress too. And so if these kind of quote-unquote deals the administration talks about are the solution, what says that tomorrow he doesn't just say, I don't like this country anymore, so I'm going to change my mind on a certain deal? It's the ongoing whim, the whiplash back and forth. That's kind of how he has been operating, and that's what's so dangerous and challenging for any of our partnerships. There's no, how do you deal with disputes, et cetera? I mean, the one deal that happened under the Trump administration, USMCA, he blew up. That was a deal that did go through Congress. He was willing to blow that up. So what does a deal mean in this context? You have to engage with Congress. Congress needs to have a vote. That's important for stability. That's what we need going forward to really make sure that we are in a strong position economically. And tariffs are taxes that are paid by families on goods. These are not, someone else isn't paying. The cost is being borne by people at the grocery store, at the checkout counter, at any store when they're purchasing goods. That's having a direct impact on costs.
To your left, Alex Rorty from Notice.
Hi, thanks for doing this, Congresswoman. You were a member of Congress the first time Trump became president in 2017. Democrats had a very good year in the 2018 midterm. They retook the House majority then. Does this election cycle feel similar to that, to you, or how is it different?
I think there are definitely similarities, and there's a difference in intensity, I would say. Back then in that first administration, there was a lot of rhetoric, but people didn't feel the impacts. It was rhetoric, but not necessarily people feeling it on the ground. Now, people are losing health care. Costs are going up. There's uncertainty and instability. People are outraged and they're scared about what's happening. DOGE has gutted programs that people depend on, Social Security, veterans benefits. People are feeling impacted every which way. That's when I talk about intensity, that's the intensity right now. People are feeling it on the ground. And remember, with the election in 2018, when we saw a big wave because people were rejecting Republicans, and definitely when you kind of look historically, if a party has the House, the Senate, and the White House, they lose seats in the midterm. So history is on our side in that way. But with that added intensity across the country, and think back then, Republicans were threatening to repeal the Affordable Care Act and take away health care. They were threatening it. Now they actually have done that. They have ripped health care away from millions of people. Premiums are going up. That's another example of the intensity that I think we're already seeing now.
Do you think the Democratic base is as engaged as it was then? Because there were things like the Women's March, a lot of groups were forming like Indivisible around that time. Do you see the same level of energy, enthusiasm, engagement with the grassroots?
Have you been out on the ground when folks have been out protesting all across the country? We have folks who are protesting every week in communities, regularly getting out there. There is a huge intensity, and I'd say it's not just Democrats. I mean, you said Democrats out there. There are people outraged what's happening in their communities. There are people in communities speaking up, speaking out, showing up. That's why in town halls across the country, we have more people showing up than we've seen before, more letters coming into and phone calls into offices, but also people showing up and standing up in communities, standing up to make sure their voices are heard. Public sentiment is a powerful thing, and I think people understand that, and that's why they are using their voices, and they're using their voices on all these issues that they come up, and they're also going to use their voices at the ballot box.
Okay, and next to Alex, what's your name?
Emma.
Emma.
Emma Bradford with Congressional.
Oh, wonderful. Excellent.
Thank you. So in regards to the 3 races in Arizona, what is it going to take to beat David Schweikert and Siscomani, and then especially with Crane and Jonathan Nez, who lost to him by 9 points last election? So what is it going to take to beat them?
So first of all, if you look at whether it's Eli Crane, who's been one of the most extreme Republicans, which is saying a lot right now, or the broken promises of Siscomani or Schweikert, people are outraged. Those were really close races before, the Schweikert-Siscomani races. And we have Joe Mendoza, a great candidate running against Siscomani. We have a competitive primary, great candidates running in Schweikert's seat. For all the reasons that we've talked about, their unwillingness to stand up for their communities. Remember, these votes, this bill has gone through, went through by one vote. Any of them could have been the vote to stand up and prevent the bill from moving forward, and yet they didn't. So they're accountable for the impact on their communities, and we're going to continue to make sure that people understand that, but also when we have great candidates, and, like a Joe Mendoza or Jonathan Nez, absolutely, who are standing up for their communities, who are connected, who are everywhere, meeting with folks, talking about the issues that matter, not hiding from voters or not doing town halls. That's how we win. And so, absolutely, those were close races before, very different environment as we head in because of all the broken promises from Republicans.
And then to kind of build off of that, they were pretty expensive races last election cycle. So how much are you willing to spend on these races this time around?
I mean, like we do every cycle, we will continue to look at all the races we're in across the country and put resources where they're most needed. Republicans are struggling, and the more they struggle, the more opportunities that also gives us going forward. But we want to make sure our candidates in strong position, they have strong support. That's absolutely the focus now, and they are working hard to do that. And then we will make decisions in terms of where things go, depending on as we see more in terms of how things play out across the country. Right now, we are going to continue to make sure we hold Republicans accountable for their broken promises, for raising costs, for not standing up and doing their jobs to stand up for their communities, for being blindly loyal to Donald Trump, for not meeting with their constituents. That's what we're going to be talking about all month as folks leave for August. But we're going to continue over and over talking about that because, as I said before, the more the American public sees and feels what this administration and what congressional Republicans are doing, the more they dislike it, the more they want change. Yet another reason why we're going to take back the majority.
Okay, it's 10 o'clock, but you said you could stay a few extra minutes.
I think.
So we'll take two more quick questions. Are we okay? Yeah? 5 minutes? Okay. Marisa Schultz from The Examiner, right?
Thanks so much for doing this and for taking my last-minute question. I wanted to just ask you about the Democratic Party's image. The President Trump's approval ratings definitely have taken a hit, but so has the Democratic Party. By some accounts, they're at historically low numbers. YouGov, which tracks daily, perception of the Democratic Party, has the favorability down at 37%. That's a lot lower than the Republican parties. I just wanted to get your sense on why that is. And why hasn't the Democratic Party been able to improve its image, and what you need to do between now and the midterms? Is there a need for a rebrand for the party?
So I think that when we talk to people on the ground, they want folks to stand up for communities. They see what's happening nationally. Again, when you talk about cost of living, et cetera, these are urgent issues for American families, and they are absolutely frustrated with the dysfunction, the chaos that they see in Washington, D.C., and they want strong representatives who are going to stand up for them. When I see it, kind of from my lens on the House side, the reason we overperformed in 14 districts across the country is because we had people who were talking directly to voters, who were talking about the issues that matter, and there was a trust, and that's been strong, and I think that's why like I said, we overperformed across the country on the ground, making sure that people's voices were heard. And that's why I feel optimistic as we go forward, because people are focused on the candidates, the individuals who are standing up for them. And we see that in data too. When you talk to people about these members of Congress, they think they have strong members of Congress. So there's the brand writ large, and then there's the person I know who is standing up for me. So it is absolutely, it's important to have great candidates on the message, and it is important for folks to understand collectively the work that Democrats are doing. But I know that when we have great candidates on the ground who are authentic, independent-minded for their communities, we win, and that was true last time, and that will be true again.
And then to your left, are you Terrence?
I am Terrence. From CNN.
And how do you pronounce your last name?
Burley.
Burley.
The J is silent.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
So I actually had a party brand question, but it got taken right before me. So I'll ask a different one, and that is, what are you looking for this November in terms of the off-year races in Virginia and New Jersey? And I know you spoke earlier about New York City being maybe not representative of the country as a whole, but sort of what lessons are you maybe looking to learn from those races in terms of how the party can pivot toward the midterms next fall?
Well, I will reiterate, and I know it. I say it a lot because it matters. Great candidates matter. Great candidates like Mikey Sherrill and Abigail Spanberger. Great candidates matter in races, whatever race it is across the country. I think that's really important. I think that folks understanding how critical of this moment for their voices to be heard, to make sure they use that power and vote. And so having strong campaigns, turning out voters is going to be critically important now, just like it will be next year. And I think that you're seeing those folks working hard, not only on those campaigns, but folks across the country kind of looking for a way they can make a difference. And I think that's going to be very, very important in these races. Those are important races. There's a lot of energy behind them, and I think that is one way where people's voices can be heard and they can make a difference. Right now, I know folks want to, look at change, what's happening in Washington, D.C. too, but we can absolutely make a difference in races across the country, and places like New Jersey and Virginia. Those governor's races are great examples.
Is there any concern in terms of if Mamdani does win the mayoralship in New York, what that could mean for House candidates in that state next November?
I think all of our House candidates have spoken for themselves in terms of where they stand on issues, and for those who are nearby, their views on the race. But again, when you look across the country, folks want to know who's running for them, who's going to stand up in these purple districts across the country, who's going to stand up for them. That's their focus, and that's my focus too.
All right. We've used our 5 minutes of overtime. Thank you so much for staying.
Thanks, everyone.
And hopefully we can see you in a year.
Yeah, seems like a long time, but that'll be an important time.
Yes,
Absolutely.
Indeed. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.